I was still surrounded by half-opened gift boxes when I opened my laptop, expecting something soft from my parents, a photo from the ceremony, maybe a message about how beautiful everything had been. Instead, the subject line read, "Wedding expenses. Final breakdown." I clicked, thinking it was a receipt they wanted me to keep. The document loaded, and my breath snagged. Every item from our small Magnolia Bluff Park wedding was listed one by one, the venue fee written as $14,900, the catering total set at $9,180, the florals at $6,620, decor and rentals at $5,780, miscellaneous at nearly $2,000. At the bottom, the total glared at me like a verdict $38,460. For a moment, I could not move. I felt the same old pressure bloom across my chest, the one I used to feel every time my sister Jordan got the new phone and I got the old one. Or when she drove the used BMW at 17 and I took the city bus. Grant came out of the kitchen holding 2 mugs. "Hey," he said softly, "your face is white." "What happened?" I turned the screen toward him. He set the mugs down with a thud. "Haley, no. They said they would cover everything." I swallowed hard. "I know." He leaned closer, reading each line. They kept repeating it for months. They insisted. A vibration buzzed against the table. A new text from my mother appeared. "I hope you received the invoice. Please pay by Friday to show you are responsible." Grant let out a short, disbelieving laugh. Responsible. This is insanity. They promised this was their gift. A familiar numbness crept up my spine. They also gave Jordan $350,000 for her wedding, I whispered. "No tests, no invoices, just praise." Grant's jaw tightened. "You are their daughter, too." Before I could respond, someone started pounding on our front door sharp, frantic hits that rattled the frame. Grant straightened instantly. "Are you expecting anyone?" he asked. I shook my head. "No." The knocking grew louder, more urgent. "Stay behind me," he murmured. But something pulled me toward the sound. Not curiosity, not fear, but the heavy sense that whatever waited on the other side would only prove what I already knew. Patterns do not break themselves. They escalate. I took one step toward the entryway, then another. My phone buzzed again in my palm. Messages from relatives I had not heard from in months. Notifications piling like falling dominoes. Grant's voice lowered. "You do not have to open that door." Maybe I did not, but standing there, in the hallway of our small Seattle condo, I knew one thing: this story was not going to fade or fix itself. It wanted to be faced. I reached out, my fingers brushing the doorknob. The pounding stopped, leaving a charged, trembling silence behind it. If you have ever lived through a moment like this when the people who should protect you become the source of your deepest ache, stay with me. There is more to tell, and I promise you, you are not alone. I drew a deep breath. Then I turned the knob. The knocking on the door faded into memory as I sat on the couch later that night, still staring at the invoice on my laptop. The numbers blurred, but the ache behind them stayed sharp. It was the same ache I had carried since childhood, the one I learned to keep quiet. Grant sat beside me, his arm brushing mine. "Talk to me," he urged. I let out a slow breath. "This isn't new. It never was." He waited, patient, steady. That was his way. "When I was little," I said, "everyone in Bellevue thought the Monroes were perfect. The holiday wreaths, the matching porch lights, Dad grilling at neighborhood block parties like he loved every minute." Grant nodded gently. "I remember you mentioning that. What I did not mention," I continued, "was the inside of the house." The words felt heavy as they left me. Inside. Everything revolved around Jordan. Grant's jaw twitched, but he stayed quiet. She picked every restaurant on holidays, every summer trip, every movie night. When she wanted a new phone, She got it the same week. When I asked for one, Mom said mine worked just fine, Grant muttered. Of course she did. I swallowed. At 17, they bought her a used BMW. Dad tossed her the keys like it was a rite of passage. My voice thinned. I took the bus. All senior year. He turned to me fully now. Haley, that is not normal. It was normal for them. I said. Whenever I asked for something, even small things, Mom would say, "It builds character," Dad would add. "You are the independent one." Like it was praise. Grant's eyes softened. They punished you for needing anything. I nodded, feeling the truth of it settle cold and familiar. By 16, I stopped asking. I got a part-time job at the bookstore and told myself I was proud of it. And I was. But I also knew no one was coming to help me the way they helped her. Grant let out a quiet breath. You taught yourself to disappear. Yes. The word came out barely audible, and they preferred it that way. He reached for my hand, warm against my shaking fingers. You do not have to disappear anymore. For a moment, I let myself believe him. Then my phone lit up again, my mother's name glowing across the screen, and every old wound inside me pulsed like it had been waiting for its chance to open. The screen lit my face as my mother's name flashed again. I turned the phone face down before I could read the message. Grant watched me with that quiet, attentive concern he always carried. Come here, he said softly. I leaned into him, letting my head rest against his shoulder. And for a moment, I could feel the difference, the sharp edge of my childhood against the warmth of my life now. The contrast made my throat tighten. Do you remember the first time you brought me to Tacoma to meet your parents? I asked. Grant smiled a little. Mom was so nervous she baked 3 pies, and she hugged me before I even got inside the house. I let out a breath that felt like a small, painful laugh. No one in my family hugs like that. Not even once. That is because she actually wanted you there, he said. Both of them did. I remembered the evening clearly, Juliet Miller bustling around the kitchen, insisting I sit and rest. Frank pulling out a chair at the dinner table like saving a place for me had become a habit long before I arrived. It felt simple, easy, real. I had not known families like that existed. You did not know what to do with kindness, Grant said quietly. I could see it. I did not trust it. I admitted. I kept waiting for a catch. He brushed a thumb across the back of my hand. But there was no catch. No, I whispered. There never was. I thought back to the night he proposed, just the 2 of us on the pier. City lights shimmering over the water. No audience, no performance. Just Grant holding my shaking hands and telling me he wanted a life with me. Simple, honest. When we told my parents, the shock on their faces had almost looked like excitement. They asked about colors and venues. They said, without hesitation, "We will cover the entire wedding." And I let myself believe it, believe them because a part of me had always wanted to know what it felt like to be chosen. Grant squeezed my hand gently. They made you believe you had to earn love, he said. My family just gave it. I swallowed hard, the weight of everything tightening inside my chest. And now they want me to pay $38,460, I said quietly. Grant's voice dropped. No, they want you to surrender. And for the first time in my life, I realized I did not have to. I kept replaying the wedding in my mind, each memory clashing violently with the invoice sitting in my inbox. It felt impossible that both belonged to the same parents, one set smiling under string lights, the other sending a bill worth $38,460 like I was a client who had failed to pay. Grant sat on the couch beside me, watching my face shift between disbelief and something heavier. Tell me what you're thinking, he said. I'm thinking, I whispered. That 2 days ago, I thought they loved me. He exhaled slowly, giving me space to continue. At the wedding, my mother had reached for my hands as soon as she arrived at Magnolia Bluff Park. "You look beautiful, Haley," she'd said, brushing hair from my forehead like we were close, like it was natural. My father had walked over to Grant and clapped him on the shoulder. "You wrote strong vows, son." Real emotion in there. I had watched them from a few feet away, feeling something strange and warm bloom inside me. Even Jordan hugged me, hair perfect, perfume sweet. "The whole setup is gorgeous," she'd said. "Mom and Dad really went all out for you." They had stood near the dance floor later that night, arms linked, swaying to a slow song while Grant and I moved in circles under the lights. My mother dabbed at her eyes. My father raised his glass. It felt like acceptance, finally. Finally, acceptance. And the next morning, my father had texted, "We're proud of you. Enjoy every moment." I could barely breathe now remembering it. "They performed love," I said quietly, because they knew what was coming. Grant turned toward me. "Haley, I should have seen it," I said. "Every kindness from them comes at a price. Always." He shook his head. "You cannot blame yourself for wanting to believe your parents were capable of loving you the way they should have." My phone buzzed again. Another message from my mother. I opened it. The words felt like ice. "This is just part of growing up. Paying the invoice shows responsibility. Your father and I agreed on this." Grant read over my shoulder. "She wrote that like she is your teacher, not your mother." I swallowed. She always talked to me like that. Jordan was the daughter. I was the lesson. Grant's voice hardened. "You do not owe them obedience." "But they acted like this wedding meant something," I whispered. "They pretended the distance between us was gone." "Maybe they wanted you to think that," he said. Maybe that was the point. My throat tightened. They hugged me. They smiled. They told everyone how happy they were. "That was image," he said. "This." He tapped the laptop with the invoice still open. "This is who they are behind closed doors." I leaned back, eyes burning. I thought maybe things were changing. Grant reached for my hand. "They did change. You changed. You see them clearly now." I looked at the invoice again. Every line a reminder of the truth I had spent years avoiding. The wedding was never a gift. It was the setup, and I had walked right into it. I did not sleep that night. I lay awake listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the soft rhythm of Grant's breathing, my mind replaying every childhood moment that now felt like a prophecy. When the sun finally smeared light across the blinds, Grant stirred beside me. "Haley," he whispered, "come here." He pulled me into his chest, warm and steady, but the calm he offered only made the storm in my chest louder. "I know what I'm going to do," I said. Grant tightened his hold. "Tell me. I'm going to pay it." He sat up so fast the mattress shifted. "No. Absolutely not. That is what they want." "I'm not paying because they want me to," I said quietly. "I'm paying because I'm done letting their money be a leash." He searched my face. "You think this frees you?" "Yes," I said. "I want it documented that I owe them nothing. Not now. Not later." He exhaled hard, rubbing the back of his neck. "If you send that money, Haley, they will think they won." I shook my head. They lost the moment they revealed who they really are. I stood, walked to the kitchen table, and pulled my laptop toward me. My hands trembled as I opened my banking app. The number $38,460 stared back at me like a dare. Grant leaned against the counter. "This is not your burden." I looked at him, my voice steady. "It always has been." He stepped closer. "You are not alone anymore." "I know," I whispered. "That is why I can finally do this." I selected cashier's transfer and entered the amount in full words. Before I hit submit, I sat back, breathing through the ache spreading across my ribs. Then I clicked. The confirmation flashed on screen. Final. Irreversible. Clean. But I was not finished. I opened a new document and began typing a letter, not angry, not pleading, just honest. Mom. Dad. I received the invoice. I have paid it in full. I want to be clear, I never asked for your financial help. I accepted it because you insisted and because I believed this wedding meant something to all of us. The invoice makes it clear it did not. This is not about money. This is about years of favoritism, manipulation, and conditional love that I can no longer ignore. I will not accept any future monetary gifts or inheritance. This will be our final financial interaction. I read it twice, then signed my name and sent it from my personal email. Within minutes, my phone buzzed, group texts from cousins, a voice message from my aunt, a long paragraph from an uncle I had not spoken to in 2 years. Your parents were trying to teach you responsibility. How dare you embarrass them after everything they do for you? You should apologize immediately. Grant looked over my shoulder. They're rallying the troops. They always do, I said softly. Another message popped up from someone I had not expected. Jordan Monroe. We need to talk. Now. Grant's shoulders tensed. Do not answer her. But I already knew I would. Because this was never just about an invoice. This was about decades of silence finally cracking open and everything that would come pouring out next. Jordan's message sat on my phone like a warning light, but before I could decide whether to open it, another notification appeared, an email from my mother. Grant saw my face tense. What now? I clicked the message. The sender address made my stomach twist. It was her corporate email, the one she used for high-level finance work. She must have switched devices without thinking. Haley, the invoice was not real. It was a lesson. Your father and I needed to know you could manage responsibility before we released the wedding fund. We planned to contribute $75,000 afterward. You misunderstood the purpose of this exercise. Grant stepped behind me, reading over my shoulder. A lesson. His voice dropped to a low, incredulous growl. She calls that a lesson? I stared at the screen, the words blurring. They never intended to give without conditions. Not once. It was a trap, he said. An obedience test. I closed the laptop slowly, and they think that makes them good parents. My phone rang then, an unfamiliar number. Local. For a moment I considered letting it go to voicemail, but something tugged at me. I answered. Hello? A voice I recognized but rarely heard replied, gentle and strained. Haley, it's Rob, your uncle. I straightened. Uncle Rob, is everything okay? I heard what happened, he said, and I need you to know something your father will never say. He paused long enough for me to feel the weight behind his words. They did the same thing to me. Their parents did it too. Tests. Ultimatums. Money tied to obedience. My chest tightened. So this is a pattern. It is a legacy, he said softly. One your father inherited and never questioned. Grant moved closer, listening. Rob continued. You were never the problem. You were just the first one to call it what it is. I swallowed hard. Thank you for telling me. Haley, he said, voice low, be careful. When someone breaks the pattern, the family pushes back. Hard. After we hung up, I sat still, absorbing the truth that settled in my bones like something ancient, finally named. Grant touched my shoulder. What? Now? I looked at the unopened message from Jordan. Now, I said quietly, they escalate. And I knew she would be the one to appear first. The knock came just after sunset, a violent, echoing slam against the door that rattled the picture frames on our wall. Grant looked up from the couch, eyes sharp. That is her. I already knew. The rhythm was frantic, impatient, entitled. Jordan had always entered rooms the same way, shoving space aside, confident that everything and everyone would bend. The pounding intensified. "Haley," she shouted through the wood. "Open this door right now," Grant stood. "You do not have to let her in." "I am not letting her in," I murmured. "But I need to hear this." I walked toward the door, my pulse loud in my ears. As I reached it, I lifted my phone and tapped the record button. Grant noticed but said nothing, just stayed behind me like a shadow of protection. Another slam. "I know you are in there." I rested my hand on the door, not opening it. "I am here." "Jordan," her voice came back sharp. "Why would you pay the invoice? Why would you do something that humiliating to Mom and Dad?" I blinked slowly. "Humiliating to them. You made them look like monsters." She cried. "They were giving you a lesson, a chance to prove you could handle responsibility. That was not a lesson." I said, "It was manipulation." "Manipulation?" Jordan scoffed. "It was generosity. They were planning to give you $75,000 after you showed maturity," Grant muttered under his breath. "She truly believes that." I ignored him and kept my voice even. "They never tested you. That is because I earned their trust." Jordan snapped. "No," I said. "It is because you were always allowed to fail without punishment." There was a moment of startled silence on the other side of the door. Then she exhaled sharply. "You are twisting everything. Mom told me you overreacted like usual. She said you turned a simple teaching moment into some drama." I heard footsteps from the hallway neighbors opening their doors just a crack. Jordan didn't notice. She was too busy unraveling. "You embarrassed them in front of the whole family." She continued, "Everyone is talking about how ungrateful you are. I am not responsible for the story they told." I replied, "They cried. Haley, they cried over you. Mom said she felt betrayed. Dad said you behaved like a stranger." Her voice wavered. She was losing ground and she knew it. I swallowed. "They used money to test if I would obey. That is not love. It is how our family works," she insisted. "That does not make it right," I said. Jordan's voice rose until the words shook. "You think you are better than us now? You think you can just walk away from the trust fund, from the inheritance, from everything they planned? I never wanted any of that." "You should have." She exploded. "Do you know how hard Dad fought for that trust? Do you know how much pressure they are under? They needed to make sure you deserved it." Grant's hands curled into fists. But he stayed quiet. "Deserved it," I repeated softly. "That is the problem. Love should not be something I earn." A long, trembling breath came from the hallway. "So what then? You are done with us? With all of us?" "Yes," I said, "until the cycle ends." The silence that followed was raw and jagged. Then Jordan's tone cracked. "Fine. Throw your family away. But do not come crawling back when you realize you are alone." "I am not alone." I said, "Not anymore." Footsteps stomped away. A door slammed near the elevator. The hallway grew still. Grant slipped his arms around me from behind, his forehead touching my shoulder. "You handled that with more strength than anyone in that family has ever shown." My phone buzzed again, one new voicemail. "Dad," Grant whispered. "Do you want to listen?" I nodded once, breathing in the quiet he gave me. The recording played softly. "Haley," my father said, voice unsteady. I do not want to fight anymore. If you are willing, I would like to meet, just to talk." I stood there, holding the phone, feeling the weight of generations shifting finally onto different shoulders. I did not yet know what I would say to him, only that this time I would speak as someone who no longer bowed. I met my father the next afternoon at a small cafe overlooking Cary Park. The place was nearly empty, the air quiet enough for every breath to matter. He was already seated at a corner table, shoulders rounded, hands clasped tightly as if he feared they might shake. "Hi, Haley," he said when I approached. I sat across from him. "Hi, Dad." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he reached into his jacket and placed an envelope between us. "Your mother and I talked. We do not want this." He pushed it closer. "Take it back. It does not feel right." I looked at the envelope but did not touch it. "I'm not taking it." His brows tightened. "It is $38,460. That is not pocket change." "I know exactly what it is," I said quietly. "And I paid it because I wanted a clean break." He let out a slow breath. "Your mother thought the lesson made sense." I should have questioned it. His voice wavered slightly. "I did not. That lesson was a test," I said. "One I never asked for." He lowered his gaze. "We wanted to be sure you could be trusted," I interrupted gently. "Earn what Jordan received without earning anything." He winced like the words cut deeper than he expected. "Things were different with her, because she was the chosen one," I said, "and I was the independent one, the child who needed less, the child who should always understand." He rubbed his hands together, palms pale. "You were never less, but I was treated as if I was." I replied, "All my life." He looked up at me then, the first true crack in his expression. "I do not know how to fix what we did. I am not asking you to fix it," I said, "just to stop repeating it." His shoulders slumped, and for the first time I saw him not as the man who set the rules, but as someone raised by rules he never dared challenge. "I want a relationship with you," he said quietly, "but I do not want money between us anymore." "Then we agree," I said. "This envelope stays with you." We sat in silence, not healed, not broken, just two people finally seeing the same truth. When I left, the sky over the park was soft and pale. Grant was waiting for me at home, arms open, relief in his eyes. Later, his mother Juliet saved me the last slice of pecan pie at dinner, and Frank pulled out a chair like he had saved it for me long before I ever arrived. It felt simple. It felt real. If you have been carrying a story like mine, if you have ever had to free yourself from the people who were supposed to love you, stay with me. There is more to tell, and I would love to hear what part of this hit you hardest.